Hi, welcome to Journey into Parenting. So this channel is all about helping you to prepare for parenthood so that you can navigate this huge life transition that being a parent entails, but also to build the resilience and find ways of supporting yourself so that you can thrive alongside your child. I'm really excited to have Nicola Tanner here today, who's a sort of a parenting and life coach. And we're going to have a conversation about ways that we can sort of integrate children into our lives, so that we can all kind of, yeah, thrive alongside each other. So Nicola, would you like to start by just telling us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I am a coach, as you say. It's interesting. People describe me as a life coach, a parenting coach. I used to describe myself as a career coach. And I guess the whole point is that, yes, coaching encompasses many different life areas. And I'm particularly excited to work with working parents because there's that intersection between life and work there. And that's through my own personal experience. I have two adult children and a teenage daughter. Um, and I've helped people change career, but I've got more and more interested in the idea that change is a constant anyway. Certainly at the moment, isn't it? We're dealing with all of that, and it's not necessarily about changing career, but it is about exploring ways to not just survive but thrive. As you, I love that word thrive that you just used. Yeah, we can thrive hopefully in a situation where we are enjoying our work and enjoying our time with the family, but um, not feeling that neither is getting enough of our attention and time. But it's not about maxing out in either area.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think especially looking at these issues now while we're in kind of coronavirus lockdown, because actually for a lot of us our normal ways of doing things have been interrupted, and so actually it's an opportunity to live in a kind of radically different way where, you know, for those of us that are parents, we've got our children around kind of 24/7 now, and so we're having to sort of find ways of like integrating work into being parents. I'm quite an advocate of sort of encouraging children to be self-responsible. Like I think this is part of the picture that somehow, I don't know if it was a reaction to sort of, you know, child labor in the 1900s, or where this has come from, but there's a sort of sentimentalization of childhood where people think that it's somehow it's not okay to ask our children to take on responsibilities or to sort of, yeah, contribute to the family. But I think actually it's really appropriate to do that, because by doing that we're helping them to prepare for, you know, their lives as adults, but also, you know, that they're capable sort of, you know, energetic beings. That actually I've noticed with my son that if I give him some responsibility, then he feels a sense of pride in that, and it helps him to feel like he's got a valuable place within the family. And yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I 100% agree with you. I don't feel like I'm necessarily the perfect role model in that respect. I lived in Asia for a number of years, and I had a live-in helper.
Okay.
So I had the luxury of not having to, you know, not only did I have the luxury, but my children growing up had the luxury of not having to do, you know, that many household chores. So we were so pampered for a while. Having said that, we came back to the UK when they were teenagers, and then things definitely changed because there was no way I was going to just take on all of the stuff that we'd had to help with. So I definitely think yes, they kind of had a sort of steep learning curve in a sense then, and arguably, you know, we lived in Dubai when they were teenagers, and things like having a part-time job or a Saturday job wasn't an option. And I actually think that that's not a good thing, you know, to have the opportunity to experience work as a teenager. I think it's actually a really positive thing, and I know I benefited from it. So they had a kind of a bit of a steep learning curve on that, but yeah, absolutely agree. And I think also that especially once you hit the teenage years, um, this whole thing around independent, being independent, being able to take care of, you know, contribute to taking care of the home and the family is part of it, and also their own learning. So for me, one of the interesting parts about this lockdown for me has been my 13-year-old daughter has been kind of in a situation where she has a lot more choice over her own learning, and I'm expecting her to sort of be sufficiently motivated, certainly with the sorts of subjects she really loves, like music and drama, just go do it on her own, and nobody's going to be checking up on her. And I think that's been a really positive thing, because I think she's learning about, what does she really, what's she motivated to do. I'm learning too. So yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for parents and children. I mean, I'm talking to a friend whose son is 17, and she's concerned that she sort of feels like she's nagging him to try and get his studies done. There's a lot of expectation. He's essentially at A-level stage. Will he or won't he go to university? And I was reassuring him to say, well, actually, this is an opportunity for him to work out how committed is he to that? Is that something he really wants? And it's for him to decide rather than you to nag him into doing it. So yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity for us to re-examine and to look at what is working in this new situation that we want to keep as we go back to something approaching normal in the next few months.
It's interesting, and I'm sort of getting this sense of like, what does it look like to have greater equality within the kind of family system, and I don't know whether everyone experiences this, but I've definitely had to sort of I think fight with my own guilt about not being this kind of self-sacrificing mother, like, because part of me does believe I should be doing everything but actually it like we were just talking about, it's not sustainable to do that, and we're kind of depriving our children of the opportunity to become self-responsible, which is what they're going to need for the whole rest of their lives. And also this kind of thing of sort of like nagging and interfering but again I have to sort of like fight with myself over a little bit, or sort of I guess just trust my son and his own desire to learn, because he goes to a democratic school, which is amazing, and the whole kind of ethos behind the democratic school system is that you provide a sort of a rich and stimulating environment and good mentors, but ultimately they guide their own learning journey, which is terrifying if you've been conditioned to think that learning looks like sitting at desks with a teacher standing at the front. And so it was really nerve-wracking to kind of enter into this journey, but actually realizing how much he knows and how complex his thought processes are from being kind of educated in this way is amazing. Because because it's all very sort of child led. At the moment the children are kind of leading lessons for each other online, and he volunteered to do a lesson on King Arthur.
Fantastic. Oh,
and I was like totally like interfering at the beginning, and then I just got him to like, I just asked him, okay, so what do you know about this subject already, and I was really amazed by how much he'd taken in and how he was looking at two different sides of the argument about did Arthur exist or not, and and it's sort of, I think maybe culturally we somewhat underestimate our children actually.
I think, as you say, I think a lot of it is our own upbringing, isn't it? Our own experience of education. And although in many ways I see the deficiencies in my own educational experience, it's still tough to kind of let go of that totally, isn't it? But that sounds brilliant, and it's actually reminding me of something. So I used to run a program, a 3-week course called the MAKE course, where you work with young people to create products over a 3-week period as a team, and they start with nothing and no experience in that area. And I'm not the expert on that. We work with green wood on a lot of the courses, and I had a green wood tutor who specialised in that. I remember him saying to me, you know, he got me, because I took part. My job was really to facilitate their experience as a team and to make sure that they were all sort of moving forward. But he got me involved in the greenwood carving, and then saying, "Oh, the best way to learn is to teach." So, you know, we had a student who'd missed out on a bit of the day, so I got to then try sort of teaching them. And so, yeah, teaching is the best way to learn, and so opportunity to do that. That's a really great idea for my 13-year-old. Actually, I'm like, right, what can I get her to teach? What she'd like to teach? That
Yeah,
would be cool.
great. And it's interesting. So I guess kind of shifting to the subject of how we manage our time as adults, so that we can have that kind of balance of work and family life. And I wonder if part of it is to do with kind of, in a way, unschooling or sort of deschooling our mentality, because I think I've tended, you know, even though I've been self-employed for a long time, my habit in the past has sort of been to act as if I've got some kind of bullying boss kind of looking over my shoulder.
Oh, that doesn't sound very good.
I
Right.
think this kind of idea of sort of, you know, that we've got to look busy or we've got to kind of fill our time somehow can be quite pervasive. And I really enjoyed reading Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, because he's looking at well, that there's a sentence in there where he talks about the fact that our culture values self-sacrifice over productivity. And again, I feel like this big kind of pattern interruption that we're experiencing now because of the coronavirus is an opportunity to look at, okay, you know, my kids are at home, I can't sit in front of my computer and pretend to be busy all day. I've got to actually find a way of just being really productive with my time. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are about that.
I think one thing for sure is that I actually believe that, from my experience, often working parents are kind of the leaders in this, because they're really motivated to single parents particularly. I'm not going to make any comments about men or women, but I think, yeah, because I've worked with both. I've worked with men returning to careers who've been stay-at-home dads as well. I think, yeah, working parents are particularly adept at this in many cases. They've found ways to make it work because they care about, you know, they need to juggle. So therefore, it can't be that, oh, well, I'm just going to work all these crazy hours. Because, yeah, their family, and it can be other things as well. I mean, I've worked with people where if they've got a passion for sports, or, you know, there's something else that really demands their attention in their life, another role in their life that's that important to them, that they're going to find ways to make that work. But you're right that we're up against this idea that, yeah, we all have this sort of bad boss on our shoulder, whether that's, I mean, where that comes from, whether that's partly just bad experiences in the workplace, or whether it's just sort of, yeah, built in that this sort of work ethic means that, yeah, we need to drive ourselves. So yeah, it's one that I've found interesting. I've worked with people so much in terms of looking at what work means to them. I remember one client I worked with who's a software designer, and we talked about it, and he was sort of saying, well, actually, it feels more like play than work. And, you know, like the terms we use are really important. I think work at its best should be not always playful. It depends on the individual, because for some, if you're very creative and innovative, then yes, it's a playful experience, and you're probably at your best at work when it feels like that. But certainly to really dig into what really motivates me, when do I do my best work? How do I do my best work? And I feel, I mean, I'm very excited, you know, when I talk to employers who kind of get that, to sort of see that, and unfortunately, there's still plenty of employers that don't, that still have this idea that, well, we need to micromanage, we need to regiment people, and we can't trust them to find their own way. But yeah, the idea that, yes, if we are at least the majority of the time focused on using the skills that we're both proficient in and that we enjoy using, facing challenges that are in line with our values, so the things that we really care about. So for me, I mean, I always get a kick out of seeing people progress and sort of uncover their talents and their strengths. So for me, if part of my day involves actually working with somebody in that way, then I can happily, you know, spend other parts of the day doing my admin or marketing, which is doesn't light me up in the same way. So, you know, it's about crafting that balance and thinking about that rather than, I suppose we kind of, I feel like I was brought up with the idea that, well, you should work hard. I mean, if I think about my grandparents' view of it, they didn't have the luxury of sort of choice. I mean, they really didn't. They left school really young. My grandmother left school, I think it was at 12. She was academically able, but her parents couldn't afford to have her stay in school because it wasn't for free. You know, school itself was free, but there was all the costs of books and school uniform and those things in those days. So no surprise then that their attitude that they sort of passed on was, you have to work hard and, you know, don't worry too much about what you really love to do. You just got to work hard and that will be enough. But it's not like that anymore, really, is it?
It's really, it's so interesting. And that, to acknowledge the fact that actually, you know, a lot of us are in a very privileged position now where we do have a lot more choice about how and when we work. And also it's interesting, I interviewed a hypnotherapist a few weeks ago and we were talking about this same subject, that actually when we're feeling playful, we're actually at our most efficient, which is great because, you know, it's really delightful to be in that state. And when you were talking about you know, the work that you feel the most fulfillment from is also the work where you're being somewhat challenged, and that those ingredients together can create a sort of flow state. So if we can have bits of the day where we're experiencing flow, then that can kind of help, you know, the work that might be slightly more mundane to feel more kind of enlivened. The other thing that I kind of picked up on when you were talking is that that there's a kind of parallel between the way that we've tended to treat our children in terms of somewhat, you know, over controlling and underestimating them, and the way that employers have tended to treat their employees.
Absolutely.
And actually, you know, I've been running a performance company for the last 10 years. And it was quite a journey for me to learn like how to be a manager. And I think I kind of went from, in the beginning, you know, everything was done by consensus and we'd have these terribly long conversations to try and make every single decision. And that wasn't good. That was painful in one way, but I didn't want to be this kind of overly controlling boss. And I found this system of working where I decided to kind of designate everybody roles like that were in line with their expertise. So I said, okay, I think you're an expert in, you know, technical management, and also that's what you're interested in. Would you like that to be your role? And I won't interfere too much. And so I kind of helped people to kind of design their own roles, and then more or less left them to it. Like I gave them a lot of trust within that, and it's sort of, and I've just, since we started working in that way, it's been really joyful. And it's sort of, I had this experience of sort of almost being with my tribe when we're working together. And I think it's because everyone's sort of, they've been given trust and permission to use the skills and qualities that they have. So I think there's something about this that if we can start to experience that both in the workplace and in our parenting, that we can actually start to get more out of people. And if we get more out of people, they're also experiencing more time in flow state and more enjoyment, hopefully, from the work that they're doing. It's quite exciting.
That sounds so exciting, Nina. I love how, yeah, because I think, yes, there's the trusting people in your team, but it was also that acknowledgement of their strengths, which I think is really powerful, isn't it? When people say, "Oh, you're really good at," that's so affirming, isn't it? Life affirming. When we, it makes me think about the whole thing of a lot of my coaching time is spent affirming and acknowledging what people are doing well.
Yeah.
Because I trying to think, there is definitely studies that show that we're not very good at doing that for ourselves. You know, we all have, I mean, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. You know, there's that critical voice that we all have that sort of reminds us constantly of what we're not doing well, or what our deficiencies are. And certainly I have that. I like to do these kind of like so that, you know, we've got those two voices going, haven't we, all the time? But unfortunately, this one can drown out. This critical voice can drown things out too, quite a lot of the time. So we really need to manually correct, I always say, you know, and coaching is part of that, to just remind people of what they're doing well. And as a really good manager, you know, which it sounds like you became, you know, through being on that journey of like, oh, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how, but let me be curious about what might work in terms of really getting people aligned and yeah, not having those endless meetings, because I think I know a bit about that as well. Because yeah, we can sort of try and force agreement to a level where actually we don't necessarily need it, and people can just head off and do their own thing, can't they?
Yeah,
that sounds really exciting, to get to that point where people are just leading with what, as you say, what they do well and what they really are excited about.
Yeah, and I think there's something important in what you were just saying, that actually as a leader or as a therapist or even as a kind of friend or a partner, to if we can hold a space for that person's best self, if we can sort of see that their kind of greatest potential almost, then we can start to kind of draw that out of them. And I think that's a really exciting process. I feel I have to acknowledge Frederick Laloux, who he's done a lot of work on sort of organizational structures, and yeah, he did some of his work has been used by nurses in the Netherlands, where things are they're run in a much more decentralized way. So apparently nurses there they operate in sort of self-organizing kind of pods of 10, where they make a lot of decisions independently about how they're going to operate. And apparently it's actually saved the government a lot of money, because the decisions they're making are much better for their local communities, and they were doing things like spending a lot of time with each patient, finding out what their needs were, what they could still do for themselves, knocking on the doors of their neighbours and kind of asking, are you willing to support, Mrs. Smith who lives at number 5 or whatever. And actually, a lot of the time we want to help people, but we just don't know how. And so if somebody asks us, would you just check in on your elderly neighbour once a week, most of us are actually delighted to have that opportunity. So I think linking that desire to help and contribute up with with the sort of social care system, I think is really exciting. That was a bit of a tangent, but
nice one though.
something that inspired me.
I think the NHS possibly could do with a bit of that idea. I don't know, I read something that was somewhat encouraging about this morning in the news, about it was sort of perspectives from healthcare workers on the front line, and it was from somebody who was in a management position within NHS, sort of saying that we're really looking at ways to sort of do things differently. So that sounded quite positive in a lot of ways. So yeah, maybe I should see if I can track him down, and I'll let him know your research there.
Yeah, and I guess I'm optimistic about human nature, and that we've kind of evolved to want to kind of collaborate and support each other, and so kind of building that into the system could be a way to increase efficiency. Yeah. I wanted to ask about so in terms of finding your most productive ways of working, whether you have any practical tips about how to structure your day, or for example, kind of periods of intense focus followed by a break, or do you have any kind of strategies around that you'd recommend?
I'm resistant to the idea of giving tips, simply
Okay.
because I think, and I'll tell you why, it's simply because I think, from my experience of working with, I suppose, hundreds of people over the years, everybody has their own way. And I think,
Yeah.
so my tip, if anything, is to sort of consider when you're most productive. I mean, so I can think of people I've worked with who are very, so maybe if I sort of create some scenarios and people who are listening, might sort of think, oh yeah, that describes me, or that describes me. So I've worked with people who are very, very structured. And I can remember one lady I coached who said, oh, I always do the thing that I least feel like doing. I tick that off my list first. And that's really energizing. And I absolutely admire her for doing that, but it's not something I've ever been able to do.
Okay.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's people who are very project focused. I found them interesting to work with in terms of career change, because often they kind of suffer from guilt for the fact that they are not sort of plodders. They don't kind of like have a sort of structure that they work to every day. They kind of get their energy levels really fluctuate. So if they're in a challenge, they might like work all night, and then when that's over, then they'll sort of take a week off. And yeah, as I say, they suffer from guilt because that's not supposed to be, it's not the normally, it's not the mainstream way of looking at things, I suppose. Because we do have this mainstream, it goes back to what you said earlier, doesn't it, about the sort of the societal sort of idea of how we should be at work. So I think, yeah, for some people to have a really very structured day, like my client who, is like, right, attack that job first that is on your to-do list. I mean, I'm definitely not a productivity expert. I would say what I am, if anything, is somebody who's always been challenged in terms of structuring my day, and I still don't have the answers, and I've tried a lot of things. I find that personally, mind mapping and creative approaches work the best, because that taps into my way of doing things, which you probably guessed when I was talking about being playful earlier.
Yeah.
But for other people, who are very structured, and to have a structure and be able to sort of see clear wins works really well. So my advice, if anything, is to tap into what really works for you, and be curious about that, to explore it, because I think otherwise we can sort of get into the ways that we think we should be working, and managers unfortunately can sometimes reinforce that, so that and meetings and things like that can be set up that actually don't make us less productive. I mean, we were talking about, we touched on meetings, didn't we? So like, some meetings are endless and they're not organized in a way that brings out the best in people. They're sometimes very hierarchical, so they're more sort of instructions from the top. And so, yeah, I think being curious about what works best for you in your day, and trusting that if it feels good, to sort of go with the gut feel of like, oh, I seem to work best when. I mean, for me, the to-do list used to be a complete. I used to feel so drained. I used to have long lists of things that I needed to do, and the best solution for me has been to start mind mapping, the beginning of the week. And I don't do this every week because I'm not that, still not that, what's the word, super organized. But on a good day, we'll do a plan for the day or the week or both. And it's a mind map of like, okay, what are my key priorities, and what's the kind of key thing I want to keep in mind for this week? I found that quite useful.
Cool. Yeah, I think I had an insight that I guess as a creative person, I'm more kind of grid-like than I am kind of linear. So it's kind of like I start doing one thing, then it sparks off 5 different ideas, and then it starts to feel like fun. And so for me, that's quite a nice way of working. I'm also kind of at the risk of sort of sounding really hippie. I think if you're a woman, actually using your menstrual cycle in planning can be really helpful. Like, I've got an app on my phone, and it just kind of, I think it just lets me off the hook a little bit, that I sort of know, at a certain point in my cycle, I'll feel really energized, or, other times, I'll be kind of grumpy or, you know, have less energy, and to sort of realize that that's just part of, you know, my body's rhythm, and the energy is going to come back again in a week or so, can be really helpful in not kind of feeling guilty when I have those kind of low energy times.
Fantastic. And I think, you know, whether it's an app or anything else, anything that quote lets you off the hook and stops you feeling guilty is a huge win as far as I'm concerned, because yeah, we can, that can hold us back, can't it? It's like, oh, I really shouldn't be doing this at this time, or I haven't earned my, you know. It's interesting, I've from time to time I've gone for a massage on a weekday morning, and it seems like such a indulgent radical act, but why should that be? You know, I feel, because it really boosts my, I mean, sadly it's not something I can do at the moment, but it really boosts my productivity. I found I get so many ideas when I'm having a massage, and it really energizes me. But yeah, you know, it's such an indulgent act on a weekday at 10 a.m. to have a massage, but why not?
But that's the thing as well, and actually the value of you know, of rest and quiet time, and, you know, just kind of having periods of time where you're, you know, you're in nature and you have your devices switched off, and actually, you know, lots of ideas can flow in at those kind of moments, and ultimately that can increase our productivity.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just thought of something
underrated.
Yeah, that
as an activity.
Sorry.
Sleep is definitely underrated, isn't it, as an activity? I think that's been a trend, unfortunately. People don't sleep enough, I don't think. I'm sure I'm possibly just as well. Yeah, I think I get better sleep than a lot of people, but still possibly could do with more.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to mention something Tim Ferriss said about meetings, and just that he was also saying that a lot of the time it isn't a very efficient way to use time, and to sort of consider, do I need a meeting, or could I just write 3 really good questions that I'm going to email out to people instead? And so yeah, I think just kind of stopping and questioning whether you need the meeting can be quite helpful. Yeah, I mean, you know, you might want the meeting for other reasons, like for, you know, for sort of social interaction, and I think that's really valid as well.
Yeah, for me, I think one thing that I would add to that is also my frustration with some of the meetings I've been involved with, is that it's a very one-way process. As I say, it can be hierarchical, or just, you know, well, this is what you need to do, and it can be it can be disempowering. So to me, it'd be 2 things. One, I would want it to be designed to be interactive, and that can be challenging in itself, because for me, there's sort of this thing of, I'm always conscious of extroverts will be more likely to participate, introverts will be more likely to not participate. So you need to build things in, like, I don't know, using post-it notes or time for reflection, such that the introverts are then feeling more comfortable and more ready to contribute their ideas. And then the other thing that I really feel strongly about is that there's too much focus then on setting actions, and not enough on celebrating what's been achieved.
Okay.
You know, celebrating to me is it's not something. It goes back to that whole thing of affirmation, that, you know, the more that we can be celebrating what we've achieved, the stronger we feel in order to go on and take on new challenges.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. Like, if I'm running a meeting, I'll use some kind of structure. Like, I've been inspired by NVC, like nonviolent communication, and just to make sure that actually everybody's voice is heard, and it's not a situation where, you know, the people with the loudest voice is dominating, because actually, you know, it doesn't necessarily follow from that they've got the best opinion. And I sort of notice myself as a, you know, as a sometimes shy person, that I can just disappear, I can vanish in those situations. And so I think finding helpful structures, so that there's a kind of sense of equality within meetings is really important. Great. Well, this has been a really fab conversation. So I'll put links to your coaching and your projects, Nicola, in the show notes below. I'm offering a course to help people prepare for parenthood. So kind of going deep into yourself and looking at sort of strengthening your relationship for when your baby comes along, and just finding different strategies to help you thrive alongside your child. Great. Thank you so much.
Sounds like an excellent course. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. All right. Bye.